Hello and welcome once again to Concert Conversations. We're very glad that you're here. We're very glad for the support of Chris Connolly and Wells Fargo Advisors, but most of all, I'm very glad that I get to introduce to you once again the music director and conductor of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, Mark Russell Smith. Thank you very much, Maestro.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and
Thank
especially
you.
for this November Masterworks concert. This is we opened with a bang with some beautiful, amazing, and for many of us, somewhat familiar music. And
Right.
then here we're going to hear something that's very, very new, very exciting in concert circles. But we'll get to that in a moment.
Right.
For this November concert, audiences can expect to begin with one of the best beginners, Richard Strauss and Don Juan.
It's a great opener, and that's why it's here. I think I was telling at the Concert Conversations at opening night, it was a kind of unconventionally conventional program for us, all romantic composers. And of course now we have we have a French composer, wherever you put him, Impressionist or Ravel, but Richard Strauss at the end of the Romantic period. And so that, absolutely, swashbuckling and storytelling, I mean, that's what Strauss's music is all about. And especially this one, it has, just the famous opening where, Don Juan is, you can picture him riding, galloping away. And it's a unique piece because, it really does tell the story and all the tragedy. So it doesn't end it doesn't end with a bang. And so it ends kind of with the big, question mark with the tragedy of Don Juan and what he kind of left in his wake. So it has all the swashbuckle, but it also has kind of, again, kind of profundity and kind of makes you think a bit at the end. So therefore, it's, it's not really an opening night thing. I don't know. But so I think the combination of these three pieces is kind of more typically what we do in the QCSO. And, something brand new and then tried and true, but also kind of telling a different kind of story.
Well, it's going to be exciting. Before we move on to the others, though, I do want to ask, I'm intrigued by Don Juan because it's a story that generations come back to. Right? And for many of us, it's Mozart's Don Giovanni,
right,
which kind of introduces us to it. But Richard Strauss is writing at a much different time. And if somebody tried to tell the story today, I don't know how they would do it. But what are the differences in his approach, do you think, between Strauss and Mozart?
Well, I mean, orchestral playing and the expectations on players and even the instruments. I mean, everything has changed tremendously since Mozart. Mozart is first and foremost a dramatic composer, and Don Giovanni is the kind of perfect embodiment of that. And so, given the kind of quote unquote constraints of the classical orchestra, given the instrumentation, given all the kind of quote unquote limitations of those instruments, I mean he milks it for all he can, and does an amazing job because he's who he is. Strauss absolutely embraced innovation. And he embraces innovation instrumentally just by the choice of instruments. And Strauss famously used, the Heckel phone and all these kind of, out-of-the-way instruments that were being developed. And so just absolutely just trying to just get all the color possibilities of the orchestra. And so he does that instrumentally, but also just certainly technically speaking, just the expectations of the players. Don Juan now is a staple of every string audition for a professional orchestra. And so, every single string player in our orchestra and any professional orchestra, knows the first two pages of Don Juan, just backwards and forwards. I wonder what it sounded like in Strauss's time. I wonder what the players were thinking, what the heck are you expecting us to do? I don't know. There are some old recordings of Strauss conducting, and, it's a little messy, it's a little messy. So he was, I don't know if he's categorically thinking for the future, but certainly thinking about, stretching the envelope as far as instrumental virtuosity, as far as instrumentation, but also just as far as how an orchestra can express. And so he was just absolutely an envelope pusher while still, compared to Wagner, compared to Mahler, there's a whole Strauss-Mahler thing happening. And what Mahler was trying to do psychologically is different than what Strauss is trying to do. Strauss much more classical, I guess, but using stories, using extra musical ideas to make his molds for his music.
Yeah. Well, I want to reserve a little bit of extra time for the second work, but I don't want to discount the final work, which would be Maurice Ravel's Daphnis et Chloé.
Right.
What a lovely, lovely way to end on a November evening or afternoon.
Right. Well, Daphnis and Chloé, again, a concert staple. So we have these two actually incredibly virtuosic, really, really difficult for the orchestra pieces that aren't necessarily that long. And so it's going to be a short-ish concert, but after kind of the heavy lifting that we do instrumentally with Don Juan, and then with our new piece with Stephen Banks, and I thought kind of like I mean, it's not dessert, but something that is just so moody and evocative and colorful. I think it's one of the great enders. I mean, the bacchanal, or the big festival scene at the end is truly one of the great endings in the orchestral repertoire.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to feel shortchanged. I think they're going to say, "Oh, can we add 10 minutes to this?" Because I mean, these are like three pretty hefty works, not necessarily time-wise, but certainly psychologically and instrumentally.
Well, I do want to get then to the heart of the matter. The second work on the program, as you mentioned, is very, very new. We'll be hearing it performed by the artist really for whom it was written.
Right.
Billy Childs is the composer of Diaspora, for which he takes on 3 poems thematically, Naira Wahid's Africa's Lament, and then Claude McKay's If We Must Die, closing with Maya Angelou and Still I Rise. Now, I confess, of the 3, I'm really mostly familiar with Angelou, and many Americans are. It's a beautiful poem. But what are you looking forward to in this performance with Stephen Banks?
Well, I mean, Billy Childs is a great composer. He's a great jazz composer, but manages to, but super familiar with the orchestra, and so really kind of combines both those worlds, which sometimes is difficult to do. So it really, and it's not all jazz music per se. It's very evocative and actually mirror the moods of the poems incredibly well. So we have this great music from a truly great American composer, and then what is amazing, what will be amazing, is Stephen Banks. I mean, he's a virtuoso sax player, and when I first heard this piece, I mean, the Minnesota Orchestra was one of the co-commissioning orchestras, and so I went to this concert because my wife, who's not a fan of the saxophone, like said, "You have to come hear this guy. I mean, he's one of the best wind players I've ever heard, any wind player of anything." And so I came, with open ears, and was just really blown away by his presence, by his virtuosity, by his heart, by this piece. And so it was one of those like, man, we got to do this in quad as soon as we can, So we can thank the fact that I live in Minneapolis for part of my life as well, and was able to hear this piece. And so like many pieces when they're being born, it's written for this particular artist, and he is such a charismatic artist and such a virtuoso. And the sax is a unique thing, I mean, the sound of the sax is it's a guest in the orchestra, and so it's a different kind of sound world, and so there's certain musical psychology associated with that as well, and so Billy Childs absolutely understands that psychology as well. So it's just a terrific piece and something very much off the beaten track, but that's what we do here. We combine the off the beaten track things that are of like the highest quality, and then combine them with the tried and true, which is like exactly what this program is.
So, I mean, we do hear saxophone, and even Ravel. I mean, you'll hear some things that he's done for that, but because it was so new, you'll never hear a Mozart saxophone piece or anything like that.
Right.
Why is it, do you think, there's such kinship between the reeds, clarinet, and saxophone? But why is it, do you think, had the saxophone been around earlier, we would have heard more? Or is it there's something about the quality? Because it's a very different quality than a clarinet. A clarinet really evokes a human voice, whereas I don't feel that as much with a sax.
Right. I mean, in orchestras, I mean, saxophone is usually like a woodman's solo instrument. It's not, there's usually not a sax section except in Gershwin and in very particular things. So it's a guest, and that unique sound color is exploited by Ravel, by Prokofiev, by I don't know who else, Mussorgsky. Well, Ravel actually used the saxophone in pictures and exhibition, but I don't know. It's hard to know. Would a sax section have ever arisen from an orchestra? Hard to say. I maybe not. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's it was made. The saxophone was developed by Adolphe Sax to have like the kind of beauty of the clarinet, but the power of a brass instrument. And so the idea was to create something with like power and brilliance. And so I mean, of course, there are powerful, brilliant instruments throughout the orchestra. So I mean, who knows? It's all kind of conjecture. But I don't know. I mean, that's why the sax is. That's how the history of the orchestra / saxophone is what it is, because of the late development and because of its unique sound quality, and kind of it doesn't blend in a way. It doesn't blend, and so would it be part of that woodwind octet? I don't know.
Well, turnabout is fair play, right? That's why I don't see a lot of bassoons in jazz ensembles or even violins, though that when they do appear, it can be very, very effective.
Right.
And anyway, I think it's just interesting the way they interact with a milieu by being different, by being a guest, and then bringing that perspective to
Well, and now, so in the 21st century, absolutely we're looking at ways that an orchestra can be all things. Can play this type of music or that type of music, can play film music, can play jazz, can play rock, can play everything. And that's part of being a contemporary modern orchestra, addressing our audience, because I mean you push a button and you can get the best jazz and you can get the best classical, you can get the best blues, whatever. And so that's kind of now the expectation of our listeners, and so we have to be supremely flexible. And so composers like Billy Childs, pieces like this, allow us to do that, to go into areas that we just did a Brahms symphony, last time, and that's, people kind of grew up on that, and so everybody feels very comfortable and super familiar. So now we have the ability to stretch ourselves a bit and to stretch ourselves with an amazing, instrumentalist. I mean, absolutely. I know everybody in the orchestra is going to be blown away, as I was, and the audience too. I mean, musicianship is musicianship, and virtuosity is virtuosity, and anybody who plays whatever with spirit and can communicate is a great musician. And so whatever instrument they're playing, so we're not prejudiced at all in that way.
Well, if you'll indulge me, I got to do a little of the behind the music kind of a thing here, but we've benefited so much from your personal connections with Curtis Institute. And now you're mentioning this is a connection through Minnesota, where Billy Child's piece was premiered, or was one of the commissioning
I'm not sure premiered.
Well, one of the commissioning, and it introduces you to Stephen Banks. But when it comes to trying to get this piece here, is it a case of my people have to talk to your people, or did you have a chance to actually visit with say, Stephen Banks and say, we'd love to have you in the Quad Cities?
No, I mean, an artist like that has an agent.
Absolutely.
And so, so we, as a big professional orchestra, we call his agent. I mean, I have not spoken with Stephen Banks.
Okay.
But, I mean, I look forward to meeting him. That being said, our office has absolutely communicated with his agent and with him about all sorts of outreach things that he's going to be doing with Rock Island High School.
Fantastic.
And I mean, he is very committed to that, and very committed to inviting people who don't normally come to classical concerts into the concert hall.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very committed to that, and not just in words, but in deed. And so he will be super active when he's here. As I said, there's a big thing at Rock Island High School. There are all sorts of other things that we're cooking up for him. And so it'll be a really great opportunity to reach out to people who normally don't come to the Adler or normally don't come to Centennial. And so that's yet another great manifestation of doing a piece like this.
Well, and I'm very grateful that my alma mater then will be represented. Fighting Rocks. That is part of the mission, though, of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra as well. So it's very consonant that Stephen Banks wants to do this because of all the things that you do. There's a long partnership now with Second Baptist Church in Rock Island about getting people into concert halls. Do you think about that ever, that people are coming in who will hear Don Juan and Daphnis et Chloé for the first time. Not only first time live, but first time at all. And how that is maybe a gift for professional musicians to be the introducers like that?
Well, I mean, it definitely is in the thinking of when I was playing this program. I mean, you want to put on pieces that are just like gripping. And, I mean, the beginning of Daphnis and Chloé, the end of Daphnis and Chloé, I mean, anybody who sits there will be just like, OMG, like I've never heard anything like this before. And it's like the most spectacular, exciting thing I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. The opening of Don Juan the same way. And so, yes, I mean, very intentionally, we put these powerful kind of show pieces, not in a cheap way, but show pieces that put the orchestra at their best, combining with a piece like this, because yes, there will be new people in, and so that is absolutely part of the thinking that we want to give them something that will actually be gripping, just as gripping as Diaspora.
Yeah. Well, okay, friends, we're hoping to whet your appetite for this, and so we want you to check out, you're watching this before the concert, Africa's Lament by Naira Waheed, If We Must Die by Claude McKay, and Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. And guess what? You can find out all those poetry titles at qcso.org, which is where you can also go to get your tickets.
Correct.
For Saturday night's concert at the Adler Theater, 7:30 p.m., Sunday afternoon's concert, 2 p.m. at Centennial Hall. But for now, Maestro, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave them hanging on the rest of it. But thank you for whetting all of our appetites for November's Masterworks II.
It's going to be a great program. It really is. Everybody's looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. And thanks for sharing your time.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next time.